Bible in a minute. Chronological Gospels, Luke chapter 1, verse 7, right? We're just covering verse 7 because this is a very important verse to understand, the context of which paves the way for the rest of the book, right? So Zechariah and Elizabeth are old. It doesn't say how old, but you got to think like Abraham and Sarah old. So they're old, and they've never had a child. Verse 7, it says, so they were righteous in the sight of the Lord, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and requirements of the Lord. That's verse 6. Verse 7, it says, and yet they had no child because Elizabeth was infertile, and they were both advanced in years. So catch that little phrase, and yet. Barrenness was thought to be caused by sin in this culture. Like if you were in a state of sin, God was not going to open your womb. He was not going to make you fertile to be able to have children. So barrenness was connected with sin in this culture. Luke is drawing a contrast between her righteousness, verse 6, and her barrenness in verse 7. Because in that culture, she couldn't really be both. She couldn't be righteous and barren, but she was. One commentator states that barrenness was often considered a sign of God's displeasure and judgment, which can be inferred from Elizabeth's reaction in verse 25. In verse 25, when she finds out she's pregnant, she says, "The Lord has taken away my disgrace from the people." So she felt disgraced because she was barren, and I'm sure everybody around her was like, what sins are you involved in, Elizabeth? So the stage is set, the commentator continues, the stage is set for another in the series of miraculous births of important men that began with the birth of Isaac, what some people consider the first Jew because he was the first male born under the covenant that God had created with Abraham. And so the birth of Isaac to 100-year-old Abraham and 90-year-old Sarah. This is found in Genesis 18 and Genesis 21. The birth of Samson to Manoah and his wife, Judges 13. And the birth of Samuel, the prophet, to Elkanah and Hannah in 1 Samuel chapter 1 and through chapter 2. And so after the birth of John to Elizabeth, the series culminates and concludes with the birth of Jesus the Messiah to a virgin, Mary. That's David Stern's commentary, the Jewish New Testament commentary, stating that. So she's righteous, but she's barren. And God clearly is not the one who thinks that she's barren because she's unrighteous, because she is declared righteous in the sight, walking blamelessly in the sight of the Lord with all of his commandments and requirements. And so God is going to do something. He is going to take away Elizabeth's disgrace. He's going to open the womb for this elderly woman. Now, we often don't visualize, we've kind of visualized Abraham and Sarah, these old people, but we often don't visualize Zechariah and Elizabeth because we don't really know how old they were, but they were old, and they were so old that they were considered past childbearing. So it's not like they were borderline, you could still have a kid, who knows? No, there was no way Elizabeth could bear a child. And in an episode of The Chosen where it shows that this elderly Elizabeth is pregnant, I think they did a really good job of giving kind of a visual representation. You've got Mary, this young lady, and you've got Elizabeth, this really old lady. And so it's quite the visual representation of two women at the opposite ends of the spectrum that are about to bring forth very important men into the world, into Israel at that time. And so it's really interesting because basically, it doesn't matter how old you are. God can open your womb. And so he opened the womb of a young female named Miriam, a virgin, and he opened the womb of an elderly woman who was clearly beyond the time of being able to bear children. So barrenness does not equal unrighteousness, and that is the whole point of what Luke is saying in verses 6 through 7. That's Bible in a minute. Dig into the Gospels. Read them and study them. You will really get some good stuff if you do. God bless and have a great day.